So welcome everyone to Fueling the Future, a toolkit for energy education. My name's Sydney Howlett, and I'm really excited to be here today talking with you all about energy conservation and renewable energy. Just to give you a little bit of background about me and who I am tuning in today from Ontario. I am a former Ontario teacher. I've taught mostly elementary school, a combination of core French, French immersion, and English from kindergarten to grade 8. I focus primarily on deep inquiry learning, coding, and robotics in the classroom. But I now have the pleasure of working for an organization called Green Learning. And for those of you who are new to Green Learning, we are a national not-for-profit organization that creates free online education programs about energy, climate change, and the green economy. Our mission is to engage and empower students to create a positive change in their future. And I'm joined today by my colleague, Andriana. Andriana just turned her video on and waved. So welcome, Andriana. She is our program coordinator, and she'll be helping out in the chat today. So if you have any questions throughout the workshop, I encourage you to actively use the chat, whether that's to ask questions, put in additional comments, or even additional resources. This is an opportunity to build on what each of us has to offer. So feel free to message her directly if you'd like, or put in the entire group chat. My role with Green Learning is I'm the engagement manager. So I support educators like yourselves in implementing these programs pretty much for educators across Canada. So if you do need assistance following this workshop, I would love for you to reach out. I'd love to connect with you and chat about how you can incorporate these even more into your classroom. So now that you know a little bit about us, we want to know who else is in the room. So this is your opportunity. You're welcome if you feel comfortable to unmute yourself and share orally, or if you want to drop in the chat, what grades or subjects do you teach? And are you currently teaching in person, online, or in a blended form? This will help me guide the workshop so that I can make sure to highlight different activities and opportunities specifically for you. Awesome. So we have some blended and in person. Looks like a lot of elementary. Oh, some French. Bonjour. 8, 9. Awesome. Environmental science. Awesome. That's fantastic. Physics. Great. Perfect. Grade 10 science. Awesome. So we have a lot of science teachers, some general teachers. That's awesome. So if you have any questions about how to connect this directly to your curriculum and what you're teaching, please do put that in the chat. If Andriana doesn't answer it throughout, we'll get to it at the very end during the question period. Okay. So feel free if you haven't yet to put that in the chat as we go along. I will be monitoring it, but thank you for those of you who did share. Before we start, there we go. Before we start the session, I would just like to do a land acknowledgement. So as I mentioned, I'm tuning in from Ontario, so I have a very different traditional territory than you folks do. I currently work and live on the traditional territory of the Attawandaron, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee people. This was land that was promised to the Six Nations, and I'm located on the Haldimand Tract, which you can see is that green space right there, and that includes 6 miles on each side of the Grand River. If you do know what treaty or traditional land you currently work or live on, I encourage you to put that in the chat. It's always great to recognize and honor that space and make sure that we're recognizing the Indigenous peoples of Canada. So what are we here to learn today? So by the end of this session, my hope is that you will have a thorough understanding of the activities and lessons in our 2 main energy programs, Energy Revealed and Re-Energy. I hope that you're able to create a custom digital toolkit of lessons, resources, and tools for bringing energy education into your classroom. And I hope that you can identify a variety of strategies for engaging your learners about energy. So I do have a digital handout for you folks. So Andriana is going to drop the link to this in the chat. What I encourage you to do right now is take a moment and download this either into your own Google Drive or onto your computer so that you can edit this document. This document contains all the links, resources, and lessons I'm going to be talking about today. So as I'm going through talking about these things, I encourage you to edit this document, highlight the lessons that you for sure want to bring into your class, make notes on the strategies that you want to incorporate. Feel free to erase anything that isn't relevant to your students. So this is your opportunity to really customize this toolkit so that later on, when it comes time to integrate this into your classroom, you have a really quick, easy resource to find everything that you need. So I'll give you a second to do that. And if you're someone who likes to follow along as I'm talking, you are welcome to use these links and explore as I'm going through things. While it can be difficult, and I'm going to go fairly quickly, I'm someone who loves to explore as we go along, so feel free to do that as well. Okay. So I wanted to start off just by talking about green learning in general and how we set up our programs. So for your own knowledge, our programs are tested by teachers across Canada. Primarily in Alberta and Canada is where we pilot our programs, but they're used across the country and actually internationally. A couple of the tools and strategies that I'm going to be mentioning throughout the program, I'm just going to cover up front so that you know what I'm referencing. The first is the spiral inquiry model. So this is green learning's model of inquiry. Most inquiry models follow a very similar structure. This is the one that we reference. If you have an inquiry model that you use in your school or in your classroom already that you're comfortable with, feel free to use that and just substitute them out. So the inquiry model works like this. First, we start off with a spark. So that's where your mind's on. You're getting your students excited and interested in a topic. That could be a question, a stat, a video, a book. Really, the opportunities are endless to spark curiosity in your students. So for example, I'm going to use a question in order to spark curiosity for you. So feel free to answer this in the chat if you'd like. Which country per capita, so per person, uses the most energy in the world? So per person, who do you think uses the most energy in the world? Which country? So we have Canada, Australia, China, United States. Oh, great. So we have lots of different options here, some great perspectives. United States, Canada. So you folks are exactly on the right track. It is actually Canada. So of the entire world, Canada uses the most energy per person. And there are a few reasons for that. And that's something that you would start discovering and exploring through this spark. Why is it that Canada uses the most energy per person? We're followed closely by the United States. So it is a very close margin. And then some other countries are followed suit as well. China has a really large population. So when we're looking at energy use per capita, they don't use quite as much energy. But when we're looking at full country use, they're definitely there at the top. So from that spark, we can hypothesize and plan. So maybe your students are thinking, if Canada uses the most energy per person, then maybe we need to transition to renewable energies. Obviously in BC, you folks have done a fantastic job of transitioning to renewables, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later. So they get into this hypothesis and plan phase where they want to investigate something. Then they have the opportunity to explore and research. So that's where they're given tools, data, and maybe they're conducting their own experiments in order to discover different information. And we're going to be going through a number of different activities today that you can use with your students to help with this investigation. Then we want to analyze and check. So that's where we're looking at our data, making sure everything is sound, and then communicating and acting. And this is the most important part where we're sharing our learning and we're actually taking action, whether that's to conserve energy, to build a renewable energy model, or whatever it may be. This spiral inquiry is not linear, it is fluid. So sometimes you might get to the point where you're at the explore and research phase and find that maybe you can't access the data that you need in order to answer your question, and students need to go back to that hypothesize and plan phase. You might get to the analyze and check and realize that you want to put your students in a different direction. So you might introduce another spark. That's how you can really guide your students through an inquiry. So while it is student driven, there's lots of opportunity for you to facilitate that. We have documents, so within your digital handout, I do have a link to our spiral inquiry that explains it in depth. You can download posters to support you as well. So feel free to check that out. The next thing I want to just discuss quickly is that all of our programs are based on the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. Now, these are 17 goals that are essentially a blueprint for how we can create a more sustainable, inclusive, healthy environment and society. Specifically, the energy programs that I'm going to be talking about today connect to affordable and clean energy, obviously, industry, innovation, and infrastructure, sustainable communities, and of course, climate action. Now, they connect to a lot of other goals as well. So for example, life on land, clean water and sanitation are all integrated and woven in, but primarily these are the SDGs that we are looking at. You can visit that website. It is in your digital handout if you want to learn more about the SDGs and get some additional resources specific to those goals. So now I'm going to jump into our Energy Revealed program, and I'm actually going to be showcasing the program for you right within the website so that later on, when it's time for you to access these resources on your own, you're able to find them and navigate the website easily. So I'm just going to flip over to our Energy Revealed website here. Now this website is password protected, or sorry, the resources are password protected here, but everything I'm going to show you today, all the resources, tools, activities are completely free. So if you would like to sign up for an Energy Revealed login, you can come here. I'm logged in right now, but you would, where it says log out, it would say log in for you. You can go there and request an option there. Or you're welcome to drop us your email. So you can either put that in the general chat or direct message Andriana, and we can set you up with an Energy Revealed login right away. So just to give you an overview of this website, we do have some background information. So if you are brand new to teaching energy education to your students and you want to have a more foundational knowledge yourself, I would start here. This is also a great tool to pass along to your students. So we have all kinds of information about kilowatts, kilowatt hours, taking personal energy action, all kinds of different things here. So backgrounders are really important so that we know where we're coming from and what information we want our students to know. We also do have a glossary. So you can actually download a PDF of this glossary and pass this right along to your students so that you can ensure that they're using the proper energy vocabulary as you're going through your units. So just at the bottom here, you can download that and pass that right on to your students. So now I'm going to be going through almost all of the activities in our Energy Revealed program. And this is where I encourage you to edit that document. Highlight the activities that you want to do, highlight ones that you want to come back to, make notes on where they might fit into your learning plan. So the resources can be filtered. So when we're talking about energy in this program, we're looking specifically at energy conservation at school and at home. A lot of schools have energy metering technology. So that means that you're monitoring or you have a dashboard where you can see where energy is being used within your school. Sometimes it's as a whole school, sometimes you have it more individually where you can see by class or even by outlet. I encourage you to reach out to your facilities advisor or facilities team in your school board in order to get that information. A lot of school boards across Canada actually give access to their teachers to view these dashboards. So if you do have access to those dashboards, you can filter by either circuit level technology or utility level. If you don't have access to that technology in your school board, you can also use plug-in watt meters. I do have a plug-in watt meter here with me today, and I'm going to be showing you a couple of activities that you can do with the watt meter and how you can really engage your students with that. Now, if you don't have any technology at all, no access, we do have activities for no technology as well. You can also filter these activities by subject. We have two types of activities in this program. The first are grab and go. So these are really simple, easy activities that require no preparation. So if you need an activity and your class starts in 20 minutes, you can head on here, grab one of these lesson plans, download the handout, and it's all ready to go. Also really great for supply plans. The inquiry and take action activities that you see here are a little bit more in depth. So that's using the spiral inquiry model in order to investigate a specific topic. So now I'm going to be going through these activities, and I encourage you, if you have questions or ideas that you want to share, to actively use the chat throughout. So I'm going to start out with all about the baseline. So when you go into this activity, in order to access the resources, you actually have to scroll down all the way to the bottom here. But you'll see here that there is a student version of this course. So all of these materials can be accessed through the student website as well. So if you want your students to access these handouts on their own, they can do so. You can drop them the link that is here, or they can come directly to energyrevealed.ca. At the top here under teacher resources, they can search for student resources. They will need this code in order to access the site. This means that students do not need a login. They do not need to put in any personal information to access this information, but we do keep it password protected, again, completely free. So I'm just going to open up this activity so you can see exactly what it looks like. So you can see the activity is here and it's step-by-step guide on exactly what you need. If you're leaving this for example, supply teacher, you might want to download the PDF version. So I'm just opening that up here so you can see exactly what that looks like. So you can see here, it gives you the time. That's of course an estimate and approximate, the objective of the lesson, and then step-by-step exactly what you need to do in order to facilitate this lesson with your students. We also include extension ideas at the end. So in this particular activity, all about the baseline, students are developing or recognizing trends in their school's energy use. So trends might be things such as, at night, energy use goes down because there's no one in the school. Or it might be even broader as there's less energy being used in spring and fall than in summer and winter due to the regulation of temperature in the buildings. So this is where students are using those energy dashboards. They can use previous energy bills, whatever information you have access to in order to see trends, recognize trends. I would start off by having your students predict what type of trends do they expect to see? What type of trends are they looking for? Then once they start investigating, they can compare whether or not their predictions were accurate and what might be causing those trends to happen. What would change those trends? There are a lot of different ideas that can come about from this. One of the extension ideas that I really love in this activity is actually to keep track of these reports year after year. So if you teach the same subject every single year, have your students do this activity every year and use the past students' activity in order to compare. Have the trends changed? What might account for those changes? What about 5 years ago? You can also access old receipts or old bills. You can also access old energy data through your facilities team. So you can compare by years as well. So you're not limited to just comparing by day, weeks, or months. You can compare by years over long periods as well. So I'm going to close this up and head back over to the main page here, just so that you can see exactly how I'm navigating all of this. Okay, so back to the teacher resources. Now I'm not going to open up the activities for every single one, just in the interest of time. They are set up very similarly. If there was a handout with that activity, and I will show you an example, it would have been within that activity as well. So can you observe how to conserve? This is an inquiry and take action activity that uses the spiral inquiry model. And this is where students will focus on researching one way that the school can conserve energy. So they might be focusing on lights. They might be focusing on heating and cooling. Maybe they're focusing on smart boards and technology device use. It's up to your students to decide what they want to focus on. I encourage you to give them some flexibility so that you not only have students investigating different things to get different knowledge, but so that they're investigating something that they're interested in. So this is, again, spiral inquiry. They would go through that entire process, and we do give you prompts in this lesson on how to guide your students through that. The community walk is an opportunity for you to get your students outside. So I saw that some of you were still learning in person, which is fantastic. So if you wanted to take your students on a walk around your community to identify this abstract concept of energy, oftentimes we find that students really don't know where energy is coming from or where it's being used. So identifying that, for example, in streetlights, cars, if you have a plaza in your neighborhood, what type of energy is being used there, whether that be in the stores or in the signs? What do you see in homes? Do you see steam coming out of any homes, smoke, heating, cooling? What do you notice? Then you're actually mapping all of that information and coming up, deducing information from that. What does this map tell you about the energy use in your specific community? So there are some geography links here. And I should have mentioned that this program is suitable for grades 4 to 12, as is all the resources that I'm showing you here today. Connections really strong in math, science, geography, but it also does connect to a bunch of other subjects as well. Moving on to the electronic overload. So in this activity, students are looking at the energy that it takes to charge various devices. So within each type of electronic used, you can compare energy efficient appliances to appliances that you have today to maybe old appliances that are 20 or plus years old. It's up to you. So you may have heard of Energy Star appliances, going more energy efficient with your appliances. So this is an opportunity for your students to really understand, what does that mean? What is the difference between an energy efficient appliance and a not so energy efficient appliance? So they're actually comparing and looking specifically at these different models. You can even give them tasks such as, you need to buy a new fridge for your home. What type of fridge will you buy based on your family's needs? You can look at size, energy efficiency. There's a lot of really rich learning that can be done here that can connect to the home. Moving on to the energy audit. So very similar to the baseline, this is looking at energy in your school. And I'm just going to open up this activity to show you exactly what this handout looks like. So this is where you really want to connect with a facilities person, or a staff member at your school might have this information as well. So again, so if I don't have access to that content, I just click here to start this activity. That'll load back up. Awesome. And so I'm going to show you the handout, and this is where you want to find out the information about your school. So this is where you can get specifically how much the cost per kilowatt hour that you're paying at your school, the size of your school, what type of heating do you use, what type of cooling? Is there any other information that's relevant to your school, such as, do you have solar panels? Maybe I know hydroelectric energy is really big in British Columbia. Maybe you have access to that, or that's where you source your energy. So this is really getting a general picture of what your school looks like. I would also include some information about your kilowatt hours and the cost, because that can differ between schools as well. So you want that information to be really specific to you. This entire program and everything I'm showing you here is place-based. So we're not giving you general information of, a school in Ontario has this type of heating and cooling system. What information can you deduce? This is all specific to you and to your school. So it's going to be different for everyone. And that helps make it more relevant for your students. So again, if there are handouts included, it will all be included right within that activity. You can see this one also has some specific backgrounder information and an assessment rubric. Assessment rubrics are integrated throughout the program. A few of them are general rubrics so that you can adjust them depending on what you're doing specifically with your students. And there are some rubrics that are specific to the activities. So that you'll find within each activity. Awesome. So I'm just going to head back now. So I see someone said, yes, so you do need to be approved for the Energy Revealed site. So Andriana, might get you to just message Christina and ask her to approve anyone who's just joined the Energy Revealed website. That's okay. Thank you for that, Noel. Okay, so I'm going to go back here and we're going to keep on going through the activities. So energy hogs. This is where we're looking at what's using the most energy. So when we're talking about energy conservation, it's important to start with the big energy suckers first, because that's where we can make the most difference. In this particular activity, we're looking at energy hogs at different times of day. So we're checking either our energy metering technology or whatever technology you have access to in the morning, maybe midday, maybe afternoon. You can also do this depending on different days, even different weeks. And you want to compare the top 5 different energies that are using the most energy. Oftentimes, this will relate to your heating and cooling. From there, students can start talking about, okay, so if heating and cooling is the biggest source of energy all throughout the day, what can we do in order to reduce that? So maybe it's hosting a monthly sweater day where you actually turn down the temperature in your school and everyone wears sweaters to keep warm in order to save energy for that day. Lots of really great learning there. You can also do energy hogs within your classroom. So what is using the most energy in your classroom? Is it smart boards, laptops being plugged in, the lights overhead? There's lots of opportunity to explore here. So don't be limited by the suggestions that we give here. If you have other ideas or ways that you want to work with this, feel free to do that as well. The extra energy investigation is where we're comparing devices to their energy efficient counterparts. So for example, looking at the hand dryers in your school, if you're using hand dryers, is there an alternative to that? What can we do to adjust for that? What can we do to improve on that? One of my favorite activities in this program is the phantom load. And I actually have is a watt meter here today, and I'll show you in a minute what that phantom load looks like. But the phantom load is essentially when a device is using energy and it's not even on. So oftentimes TVs, coffee makers, anything with a light or a clock tend to suck energy when they're off. So that's a really big issue because if you're only watching your TV for an hour a day, that means 23 hours a day when you're not using it, it's still using energy. So how can we go about adjusting for that? What devices can be unplugged when they're not in use? This can be extended to all different types of devices within the home and within the school, especially at nighttime. So if you're comparing energy use during the day versus at night in your school, it's a really easy way to reduce that energy use by unplugging devices before you leave, or even just on weekends. So if maybe it's too much to unplug your smartboard every day, maybe unplug it on weekends. That's 2 days every single week that you're saving X amount of energy. Which leads me into the next activity, which is how smart is your smartboard? Looking specifically at the devices within your classroom and what energy they're using. So not only does your smartboard need energy to run, it's connected to a projector, which is often connected to your computer, which is often connected to a stereo or an audio system. So there are a number of different things that need to work together in order to make your smartboard run. What do all those devices together? How much energy are they using? What can you do to reduce that energy use? So this is specifically looking at energy in your classroom. So if you have a smartboard, I would recommend you check out this activity. The Imagination Station is really another spiral inquiry opportunity where students can investigate basically any chosen topic that they like using the energy metering technology. And you'll see that a lot of these activities actually overlap, and that's very intentional. We know that you can't tell students something once and they're just going to get it and it's going to stick. Sometimes you need multiple investigations and multiple times to go through an activity in different ways in order for that information to solidify and consolidate for them. So that's why you might hear some overlap between these activities. There are slight differences. If you want to even combine these activities or give just more options for one activity, you can do that as well. This is completely optional and flexible in the way you use this program. The Science Slam is a very interesting activity to help your students share the knowledge that they're learning about energy. So we know in that end of the spiral inquiry that a really important part of learning about energy is sharing our knowledge so that others can be energy conscious as well. Similar to a poetry slam, a science slam is where students pick the most interesting fact, information, or knowledge that they've gained by learning about energy. And they present this in a 2 to 3 minute video. We do have a specific rubric for the Science Slam and some example videos of what that Science Slam looks like. So if you're looking for a really creative way for your students to share their knowledge, this is a really great opportunity. Now, the small appliance energy reliance activity is actually something I'm going to do today with you. So this is where we're looking at different devices and what energy they use. So I'm going to open up the handout just so you can see what that looks like and follow along with me if you'd like. So I do have some devices here with me. Now I won't go through all of them just in the interest of time, but I will go through for sure some light bulbs and maybe 2 or 3 appliances. I'm just going to open up the handout here so you can see. So first off, we start talking with students about what type of appliances they use every day. Oftentimes, students don't recognize when they're using energy. A big one, for example, is showering or using water. If you have an electric hot water heater, you're using electricity in order to generate that hot water every single time you turn on that tap. So walking students through their day-to-day routine, starting with when they wake up in the morning with either an alarm clock, a cell phone, or whatever it may be, all the way to the end of the day, look at what devices you're using and where you're using energy. From there, we want to focus in on a few different appliances. One really important difference that I want to show today is the difference in light bulbs. And I do have a lamp here with me today. So one thing when you're talking about energy is also recognizing what is taking the energy. So my lamp doesn't actually use any energy. It's the light bulb that uses energy. So just recognizing that as well when you're talking about energy is important for students to understand where that energy is actually coming from so you can accurately measure it. Now, I have a couple different light bulbs here today. First, I'm going to show you the incandescent light bulb. Now, this is a glass light bulb, and incandescents are one of the most energy one of the least energy efficient light bulbs out there. They actually create a lot of heat, and it's heat that's used in order to produce light. So let me show you what this looks like. So I'm going to put this into my lamp. I have my watt meter plugged in. So if you've never used a watt meter before, they essentially work like this. You plug it into a wall outlet. In my case, I'm going to plug it into an extension cord. I've plugged my lamp into my watt meter. And I have a nice fancy watt meter, so I have a nice cord, so I can show you exactly what these watts are going to look like. So when I turn on this lamp, you're going to watch that jump right up. Okay, so I'm at about, let's say 56 watts, and it's not producing a ton of light. Now watch as I compare this to my LED light, which is significantly more energy efficient. Now I'll tell you right now, I did this activity with a grade 4 class this morning, and their face did one of these when they watched the difference in energy. So this is my LED light bulb. So we went from about 56 watts with the incandescent to about 6 watts with the LED. So this is a really great way to show students exactly what it means when we say that LEDs are more energy efficient, because just knowing that as a fact sometimes isn't enough. But we can take this even a step further using our energy calculators. So now I'm going to show you the energy calculators, which is my absolute favorite tool in this program. So we only have energy calculators currently for Ontario and Alberta. I'm going to show you the Ontario calculator because, like BC, we generate most of our electricity through hydroelectric. You can compare it to the Alberta calculator, and I will show you that in a minute. We do have a national calculator in the works that will allow you to put in your specific cost per kilowatt hour and how much greenhouse gases are being produced by all of that information. But I would actually recommend, if you want to use this calculator in the meantime, that you use the Ontario one because it is closest. So this calculator needs two basic pieces of information. It needs watts and minutes used per day. Minutes used per day, so not hours. Keep that in mind with your students, that they will need to multiply that by 60. So if I'm looking at this particular light bulb that used about 56 watts, let's start with the incandescent. So let's say I'm using this light bulb for maybe 3 hours a day. So that's 180 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and calculate that. Now this calculator is going to tell me exactly how many kilowatt hours per year I'm using, how many kilograms of greenhouse gases are being emitted from that use, and the cost. Now in BC, you actually pay about 0.3 cents per kilowatt less than we do here in Ontario. So I would go with the mid-peak number or even the off-peak number if you want to look at cost using this particular calculator. The on-peak will be a little bit more than what you're paying out in BC. Now, let's compare this to if I was to switch to an LED. Okay, so I'm just going to erase that 5. There's about 6 watts for our LED. So look at the difference that it made just by switching the light bulb. I've reduced my kilograms of greenhouse gases emitting. I've reduced how much I'm paying in electricity. So you can use this with your students to compare the upfront cost of incandescent versus LED, the long-term costs of LED versus incandescent. You can calculate, if a student makes an energy saving plan that includes changing out their light bulbs, they can calculate exactly how many kilograms of greenhouse gases they're going to be saving by that one small energy change. Okay. I'm going to show you another device here, and I'm going to compare it to the Alberta calculator because that's going to bring me to another conversation. So I also have here my diffuser. And I've chosen the diffuser for a very specific purpose. I did mention I would come back to the phantom load. So as you notice, when I first plugged in my lamp, my watt meter stayed at 0. Watch what's happening now that it's plugged into my diffuser. So you can see it's jumping up there. When you look at my diffuser, it has a light on it to show me that it's off. That's a big indicator for me that it is currently using energy. So this does have a phantom load of 0.4 watts. Now, if I was to turn it on, you can see the watts are going to jump up there. It's right about 10, maybe 11. We can round up to 11 watts. So where this calculator also comes in handy is you can compare based on the phantom load to what you're actually using. So if I was to use, and I'm going to hop over, no, I'll do it in this one. So 0.4 watts, and let's say I use my, or I'm not using my diffuser for most of the day. So if there are 1440 hours in a week, I'm going to go with 1420. So I use this for maybe about 20 minutes a day. So keep in mind, you're transferring this into minutes per day. So let's say I only use my diffuser 20 minutes a day, but it's plugged in all the time. This is how many kilowatt hours per year I'm using. Now, when it says 0 kilograms of greenhouse gases, that doesn't mean that this has 0 footprint. This rounds to the nearest whole number. So that means that it's less than 0.5 of a kilogram of greenhouse gas, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Now watch if I compare that. So let's say 3 kilowatt hours per year is what I'm using. Now, if I was about 6 watts for 20 minutes a day, I'm only using 1 kilowatt hour per year. So my diffuser is actually using more energy through its phantom load when I'm not using it than through using it. So that's where students can really understand that unplugging devices can really save energy and make a big difference in their life. So I'm going to continue on with the activities. I will show you the Alberta calculator at the very end as my introduction to renewable energy technologies. We will be taking a break once I finish this program for about 5 minutes. I know this is a long 90-minute session, and I personally will need a bio break. So don't worry if you get antsy. We will take a break before we get into renewable energy technologies. My personal favorite activity in this entire program is Speak for the Trees. This is where students are comparing their energy use and those kilograms that they're producing compared to what trees can absorb. So we know that trees breathe in carbon dioxide and breathe out oxygen, but how much carbon dioxide can they absorb in a year? It's about 21 kilograms on average. Now in BC, you have some beautiful big trees, so it might be even higher than that. It ranges depending on what type of tree you have, how old that tree is, and a number of different factors. But as an average, we go with about 21 kilograms. So when you're talking with your students, for example, if you were to do the small appliance energy reliance activity, where they're looking at a number of different devices in their home, they're calculating the greenhouse gases for all of those devices and adding them up, they can actually calculate in terms of how many trees it would take to offset their carbon emission. Do you have that many trees on your property? What about at your school? There's a bigger conversation that can be brought in there that ties really well into environmental activism and how we can go about planting trees and making sure that we're offsetting our carbon emissions, whatever they may be. One of my favorite activities. I do also have within the digital handout a Kahoot activity. So this is a game that I play with students when I do workshops with them with this activity. So you are welcome. It's a really engaging and fun activity to introduce students to this topic. I also do have in there some YouTube links. So we have recorded workshops. We have guided lessons for students as well. So that's where either myself or Andriana are actually speaking directly to your students. So if you are learning blended or online or even in person and you want to assign an asynchronous task, you can send them over to that website. We'll give them all the information that they need. They pause the video when it's time for action, and they play the video when they're ready to move on to the next step. It's a very easy way to get your students learning, great for supply plans as well. Okay, so moving on. Start Me Up is actually looking at laptop use. And I'm going to show you my laptop here. So most schools have some type of computer lab or laptop carts in their school that tend to take a lot of energy. So this is what we want to look at here today. Students are comparing laptops in 4 different ways. First, when they're off. Second, when they're in sleep mode. Third, when they're on, but being used kind of gently. And fourth, when they're on, being used using lots of maybe internet, videos, or whatever it may be. So I'm going to plug my computer into my watt meter so you can see, and I'm working on a MacBook today, just for your own reference. So this will range depending on what type of computer you have. So I'm at about 20 watts right now. Now watch this number as I open up an activity. What happens when I start using my computer? Let me just hop around a little bit, maybe make it work a little harder. So I actually did this activity this morning with some grade 4 students, and my laptop went up to about 40 watts. So depending on what you're doing with your class, the watts are going to range. So using video call is a big energy sucker. Watching videos online, big energy sucker. The least, when you're using the least amount of energy is when you're not using the internet at all. That's another point that I should bring up, is that when you're talking about energy in your home, don't forget about devices such as your router that are being used constantly and are always plugged in. So this is a really exciting activity because that gives students an opportunity to really make a difference in their school. So they can even calculate, how much money or how many greenhouse gases they could save by unplugging either your laptop cart or the computers in your lab for one night or one weekend. Or what if we did it every night? Talk about those changes with your students. Something really exciting that a lot of students love to do, and this is part of the extension activities or ideas within the program, is looking at what could you do with that money? Propose an idea for your school. Maybe your students want to take on being responsible for unplugging and plugging back in those devices every day, and maybe they have the opportunity to decide what's done with the savings that they that are generated from that. Take a look is actually looking at the physical hardware within your school. So this is looking at the circuit breakers and helping your students to identify those different parts. If they aren't labeled in your school, this is a great opportunity for students to do this. Often at home, breakers aren't labeled correctly either. So that's a great opportunity to have your students looking even in their home, comparing what's at home to what's at school, labeling that information, and really understanding the hardware. The total energy versus total cost, very similar to the small appliance energy reliance, is looking at how much your appliances are costing you. So we want to factor in the upfront cost of appliances and the running cost of appliances. Because energy efficient appliances do tend to be more costly upfront, it's important that we talk with students about the long-term energy and cost savings so that they can properly make decisions. It's really helpful if your students are in the process of purchasing any new devices. So maybe in their homes, they're looking for new kettles or new stoves or fridges or whatever it may be. They can be actively part of those conversations at home with their families. The last two activities do overlap again. So the understanding energy efficiency in your school is another spiral inquiry. And the spark is, what is the impact of your school energy use on blank? So you can look at what's the impact of your school's energy use on the environment, on the future of your school, on your community, on the students. It's up to your students to decide what they want to investigate and what impact that's really having. The watchers and seekers is where you're actually dividing up your physical school and looking at the different areas in your school. I will give one caution with this one, is that students often find that staff rooms are actually the biggest energy use in the school. That's often because in staff rooms, we have multiple microwaves going, kettles, we have stoves, and teachers congregate in there all at once. So the energy spikes. So students might recognize that and talk with teachers about how they can go about reducing their energy use, which is a really awesome and fantastic learning opportunity for them. So these are the activities within the Energy Revealed program. We are constantly adding new activities, videos, and resources. As I mentioned, we're currently developing the national calculator, and we do have some videos that are about to be released that talk about calculating energy. For example, how much energy does it take to run up the stairs? So look out for those. If you want to be notified when those resources come out, I encourage you to join our newsletter. That can be done on our website at greenlearning.ca, or you can direct message Andriana your email and she can directly add you to the mailing list following this workshop. Now, before we take a break, I would like to show you the difference between Ontario and Alberta's energy calculator, because this opens up a conversation about where we source our energy. So to come back over here, I'm going to use the example of maybe my kettle. So let's have a look at my kettle briefly and just see how many watts my kettle uses. Okay, so I'm plugging in my kettle here, and I apologize, this will get a little loud for a second. I'm turning it on and it's jumping up. Maybe we'll go about 1345. So if I put in my watts, and I use my kettle about 2 to 3 times a day, and it takes a few minutes to heat up. So I'm going to say about 10 minutes per day on average that I'm using that. So here in Ontario, that means I'm using 82 kilowatt hours per year and 6 kilograms of greenhouse gases. Now watch what happens when I put the same information into the Alberta calculator. So again, I mentioned that Ontario generates most of our electricity through hydroelectric, same with BC. Alberta, on the other hand, generates most of their electricity through fossil fuel, okay, which is obviously producing a lot of greenhouse gases. So the same information, kilowatt hours, 67 kilograms of greenhouse gases. So again, in Ontario, it was 6 kilograms of greenhouse gases. So while it's costing them slightly less in energy, the greenhouse gas output is significantly more. So this is where we can start talking about where we're sourcing our energy and why it's so important that we're sourcing clean, renewable energy. That's going to lead me into our next program, which is all about renewable energy technologies. But before we get into that, I do want to give you an opportunity for a quick body break. If you need to go to the bathroom, grab a drink, or if you'd like to open it up for some questions, I'm more than happy to answer some right now. I'm going to put a 5-minute timer on here. So if you don't mind making sure that you're back in 5 minutes so I can continue on, that would be fantastic. But I encourage you to take a stretch, move your body, even get outside for a couple of minutes for some fresh air if you need it. I will be here for questions. So if you want to ask any questions about the Energy Revealed program and energy conservation and climate action, please feel free to let me know. We do have some challenges that I'll go through at the end as well, and I will give you an opportunity to ask questions at the very end as well. I myself am going to stand up for a quick stretch. So if you need anything, feel free to direct message me in the chat or talk to everyone in the chat. It's really open.
Hey, Sydney, we do have a question in the chat here.
Hello, so someone had a question in the chat just asking about the videos I was talking about with the guided lessons. Those are linked in the document here. I'll just show you where that is. They are also found on our YouTube page. So if you want to go down to the Speak for the Trees, I have linked our YouTube page right here at Asynchronous Guided Lessons for Students. We do have a few different options. Speak for the Trees is just one of the lessons that we have pre-guided. I encourage you to check out quite a few of them. We also have teacher guides on there. So if you don't have time to go through all of these resources and you need a quick 3-4 minute video explaining to you exactly the inquiry process or an activity and how to guide your students through it, there's a ton of resources on our YouTube page. There's also professional development on our YouTube page, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. But we have a few relating to renewable energy and even energy conservation as well. And we're constantly adding more. This recording will also be available on our YouTube page following the session. So if you would like to get a copy of that, you can make sure to check our YouTube page. Again, you're welcome to join our newsletter where we give out all this information regularly. No problem. Head back over. So we have about a minute, 40 seconds left. So if you still need to do any stretching, grab a glass of water before we jump into the last half of our session, please do that now. Okay, folks, we have less than a minute left, so I'm going to ask you to come on back if you're ready. I will get started right on time just so we can make sure we're ending on time as well. Oh, my goodness, that was aggressive. So welcome back, folks. We're going to get started again and jumping into renewable energy technologies. So just so if you're following along on this sheet here, I will come back to the challenges at the end. I do want to leave you off with that. But I am starting with the renewable energy program here. So I do have it as a subtitle here. So if you wanted to follow along, you're welcome to head over to reenergy.ca. I am going to start off before I jump into the actual program by sharing with you a resource I just discovered, or maybe it was just released this week. It's a new switch to renewable.ca, just to give you a picture of what renewable energy technology looks like already in Alberta. So this is going to give me a great picture. So in BC. So in BC, you're using about 90% renewable energy. And this website will give you all kinds of information, 2040 projections, how it's being used by sector. My favorite part is the distribution of energy across British Columbia. So you can see, as I mentioned, you're mostly sourcing your energy through hydroelectricity, which is true for across Canada. About 10% of your energy is through the combustion of fossil fuels. And just over 2% is through wind energy. We're going to be going through a number of different renewable energy technologies today, but this is really important for you to know because we want to make this as relevant as we can to your students. This source also does give you information about all the provinces and territories in Canada. So if you want to compare even to your neighbors to the right, looking at Alberta, you can load this up and you're going to see the drastic difference, obviously. 8% renewable energy is where they're sourcing from. So you can go down and you can investigate this. Your students can start talking about this, having conversations about the importance of this. There are a couple provinces and territories that are about 99% renewable energy. I believe PEI, Quebec are also a part of that as well. But as far as renewable energies across Canada, British Columbia is right up there. So now I'm going to jump into the renewable energy program. Now, this program started out with the solar oven. Can you see my screen okay there? Just want to double check that. Yes, okay, perfect. So look, it said pause for some reason. Perfect. Okay, so the renewable energy program has 7 different modules within it, looking at all different types of renewable energy. This program started out with the solar oven. Some of you might be familiar with the solar oven challenge. Since then, it has grown to include more, and we're constantly adding new modules and different types of renewable energy to the program. Within the program, we have a number of different construction plans in order to build these renewable energy models. So for students to get the most hands-on, real experience, this is an extremely STEM-based program. We want them actually building and investigating these renewable energy technologies. So I'm going to start off with the solar oven. So I'm showing you again right within the system so that you know how to navigate this program. So here you'll see on the right-hand side that I have a number of different options here. I have solar heat backgrounder, solar electricity backgrounder. These are student friendly. So if you want to download these and pass these right off to your students, you can absolutely do that so they can have some really strong foundational knowledge of how this technology works. Now, the solar oven looks at solar heat or thermal energy. You can use the construction plan that we have here. So within the construction plan, we give you all the resources that you're going to need. So the materials, tools, you can see a little bit of background information, safety considerations. We even give you printables. So if you want to use this exact plan, you can download measurements. And then we give you step-by-step instructions with pictures. All of our construction plans, with the exception of one, and I'll highlight it when we get there, also have video guides. So if your students learn best by following along with the video, we have that option for them as well. There's also extension ideas, additional questions that you can be asking your students, all within this document. For solar energy, because we've been doing it for so long, we also have a long list of showcases. So if your students want a great starting point to see what other students have built so that they can improve upon those models, check out what's been done in the past. There's also some great ideas of recipes here. So once you build your solar oven, we encourage you to actually cook something in that, whether it's brownies or nachos, whatever your students want, to actually put this into use. What I love about the solar oven is that it can be done with using mostly either recycled materials or materials that you commonly find around your house. So some of these activities do require a little bit more materials than others. I will point out the ones that are a little bit more accessible. If you need a material list with direct links on where you can find these materials, let me know. Feel free to email me or again, drop your email to Andriana and just let her know that you want that information and I can share that with you. We're currently updating our material list and I'm happy to share that so you don't have to go around finding all this information. We want to make this as easy as we can for you and support you along the way. So I'm going to head back over to my main page here. And so I just want to show you all the different options here. So I'm going to go to the wind turbine activity. And this is where you're building a wind turbine. Now, with the exception of solar energy, most renewable energy technologies use some type of rotating turbine in order to generate electricity. Again, we have the construction plan, backgrounders, general backgrounders, all included within here. The step-by-step guide video is located on each page, so you can have a look at that as well. One thing I want to show you within the wind turbine is actually our simulator. So simulators are a really awesome way for students to further their knowledge and really explore on their own. So this is our wind turbine simulator. And it has a number of different pages that students can go through to better understand how wind turbines work, what they're made up of. So I'm going to take a minute and just show you briefly what this looks like, but I encourage you to investigate this on your own. It is linked in the digital handout there, so it is a little bit hard to find on our website. So you can see here, there are a number of fill in the blanks here that students will discover as they play around with the wind turbine. So in general, the higher the wind speed, blank. So I can start increasing the wind speed here. And you can see it's jumping up. My wind turbine is starting to spin. And oh, the greater the electrical output. So students can play around with this and investigate each of these questions, looking at if the wind direction changes, do wind turbines actually follow the wind? Most of them do. Another fun fact about wind turbines, if you want to connect it even more to science, is looking at biomimicry. So wind turbines, the actual turbine was designed based on the fin of a whale. So looking at how we're copying nature in order to improve our renewables is also a really great entry point and connection to science. So let me see. So the highest electrical output is at, what is it at? Let me try and see if I can find it here so I can move on to the next page. I believe it's around 16. Perfect, it is. And my last question, a wind turbine needs a wind speed of at least, so this is where I'm going to the minimal. What do I need in order to work it? Okay, so you can see that a wind turbine actually stops operating at 26 meters per second. Once I've completed this part, I can move on to the next part of the simulator. So this is where I'm actually looking at the parts of a wind turbine. And as I go through and identify these different parts, maybe I want to look at the generator. Once I've correctly identified where the generator is here, it's going to give me some more information about what that means. So this simulator is a great opportunity for students to explore on their own different wind energy. Simulators are a great tool. We have a number of them, and we're currently working on transferring all of our simulators. With the death of Flash, they stopped working. We're working on transferring those over, so we're hopefully going to have a lot more simulators in the coming months and years. So moving on to the other types of renewable energy technology, I'm going to head over to the hydroelectric generator. So this is one of our construction plans that does require a bit more materials that aren't as commonly found in your house. So this one I would suggest that you do as a group if you're learning in person, because you can support your students in putting that together and gathering the materials, versus if they're doing it at home, it can be really intimidating and difficult. We also do, I should mention, within the construction plans, give you troubleshooting tips. So if you find that you build a model and it's not working, we give you ideas on how you can go about trying to fix that. You can also always reach out to us if you're having any issues or need support. We're here for you. It's completely free. Please access this resource. I love talking with you folks and hearing what's going on in the classroom. So I'm not going to go through and show you each of the construction plans and each of the backgrounders, because they're very consistent throughout the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to show you some alternate resources and activities that you can do within each of these renewable energy technologies that you can incorporate into your learning. So for hydroelectric power, I want to show you a really awesome virtual tour that you can take. And this is linked in your digital handout. So this is a tour of a reservoir dam. So if you're learning through blended learning or even in person, and you want your students to have the opportunity to explore something new, and you can't get out to these sites directly because of the current pandemic, virtual tours are a great opportunity. So you can actually go right into the turbine room, explore. You can create maybe a scavenger hunt for your students to explore these resources or go through them together. You can also contact your local hydroelectric facility and see if they're willing to set up a virtual meeting with the expert there, or if they have a tour specific to your region. This one's a great tool that I really love to use, but you're welcome to explore. There's hundreds of virtual tours out there that cover all different types of renewable energy technologies. Okay, moving on to biomass. So we do have a biogas generator. Again, this is one of the construction plans that requires a little bit more materials and setup. This is the only construction plan in our repertoire that does, the hydroelectric, I believe, is the only one that does not have a video. Biogas does. So the way the biogas generator works is you're essentially using carbon, natural substances such as maybe manure or wood chips, anything left over from nature, combusting that or fermenting that. There's a number of different ways that biogas generators can work, and that's used to create energy. This is really great to offset some forestry. So I know obviously in BC, forestry is really huge with your big, beautiful forests, but there's often a lot of leftover wood or wood pellets that can't be used in things such as MDF. It's really dangerous to stockpile all of that because it can basically surprise combust, so it can catch fire very easily. So it's not really great for storing, and burning it causes a lot of greenhouse gases, those facilities. So biogas generators are a great alternative for that. And with biogas generators, I would actually like to show you a resource called Tinkercad. Now, this is a 3D design software that is completely free. I will let you know that if you want your students using this and saving their projects within the system, they will need a login. So if that's a barrier for you, I just want you to be aware of that up front. Here's an example of a biogas generator that a student created. So you can see this would be where they put in the fuel or the carbon pieces. You can have them explain exactly how this would work and how it would generate energy into the home. This tool is also great for just creating either a model of what they want to build, or if you're learning online and you want your students still being interactive and building things, use Tinkercad. It is a simulator in itself. So it does have, let me just hop back over here, a circuit simulator. So you can actually see whether or not your circuits would connect and work right within here, which is what I love about this program. Another thing that's really great, now this is an example of a solar oven that was built using this program. is over here in the shapes, not only do you have all the basic shapes that are there, but you also have a make at home option. Now, this is where things can get really equitable for students, or where you can start planning for using recycled materials. So if they want to create, for example, a model of their solar oven, or maybe this is how you have them going through their planning phase, they can actually use common items that they find in their homes. Maybe they want to make a penny battery using pennies. You can use this and drop that right into your plane here and manipulate that as you want. So let me go ahead and add this penny in here. Okay, so I can change the size, shape, location of this. Another thing that I actually just recently discovered with Tinkercad is that you can add notes. So if you have your students creating their plans within Tinkercad, you can have them add a notes here saying maybe this would be add tinfoil, or maybe paint black. So they can add notes and demonstrate their learning and create a full, complete plan right within this digital design software. It's completely free to use, a great opportunity for student learning. And I'll tell you, I've used this with students before, and I've used a lot of coding programs and digital programs with students, and they pick up on them extremely quickly. So if you are nervous about investigating this tool, don't be. Your students will pick up on it, and they will be able to explore it and build on each other's knowledge. So don't be intimidated by this, thinking you have to know how to do everything with this program in order to introduce it to your students. If you do have questions about it, I'm happy to talk with you about it as well. But just to give you an overview, this is what this program looks like. Okay, moving on, I'm going to hop over to our energy storage. So we have two modules in our energy storage. We have both a penny battery and a flywheel option. So I'm going to start out with the flywheel. This is also a great activity for using recycled materials or materials that are commonly found around your home. Again, we have the video, construction plan is all available here. But what I really want to highlight here is the energy storage home. This is linked in your digital handout. This is where you can come to find all of the curriculum connections, learning outcomes. We have a number of different student-friendly backgrounders depending on what it is you want to investigate with energy storage. And then we also have some connected learning activities. So if you want your students, where's my favorite activity? Here it is, exploring how to make a battery. So you might have heard of potato batteries or even maybe lemon batteries. This is where students can investigate what type of things can you use to create a battery. This is a great introduction into the penny battery, which again, might be difficult if you don't have any pennies. So if you find pennies, keep them handy, because the penny battery is a great opportunity for students to learn a little bit more about energy storage and how that all works. So again, there are a number of different learning activities within here. Some are labs, some are just handouts. So for example, the energy storage match. We also do have this activity on easel for Teachers Pay Teachers. So for those of you who like to have interactive PDFs, you can check it out there. So this is a really great, easy assessment tool if you want to just check in on your students, how they're doing and how they're progressing with this information. There are 4 different types of energy storage. We cover mechanical and chemical, but we will again be constantly adding to this program. The last module in this program is our electric vehicle module. And I will say students do love electric vehicles because they do have the opportunity to race them at the end. So again, we have the video, construction plans, and I will get to the re-energy challenge at the end. So the electric vehicle does have its own webpage as well with a number of different activities. And I want to get into these activities a little bit more. So again, all the learning outcomes. Here you'll find we actually have students guiding other students on a tour of a Tesla 3 model. So for those of you who are who are teaching high school and have students who are at that point where they're starting to get interested in cars or maybe even driving themselves, this is a really fun activity for them to explore. Now, again, we have a number of different backgrounders here, depending on where you want to take this learning with your students. Some learning activities, the history of the electric vehicle. I love the what EVs should you buy. So giving your students a scenario, maybe they're buying a new car for their own family or a simulated family that you come up with. We have a catalog that they can go through and they can evaluate based on their family's needs, what type of electric vehicle they're going to need. So the size of the electric vehicle matters, how far it can go will matter. And then also looking at their community. So that's where planning a trip in your EV matters, because unfortunately, right now, the infrastructure for electric vehicles is obviously not as big as for gas or fossil fuel based vehicles. And so we want students to be able to plan accordingly based on how far their electric vehicle can go and where those energy sources or electric vehicle charging stations are located right within their community. So this is a planning activity. Of course, we have the construction plan. The construction plan is specific to a bus, but feel free to adjust that and encourage your students to make it whatever they want if they don't want a bus. There are a couple more activities in here as well that are based on the spiral inquiry that are place specific. So this is where we're looking at EVs in your community. So maybe you want your students planning out where some electric vehicle charging stations could go or where they would be optimal in your community. These are guides exactly on how to do that. Again, we have some teacher guides and additional resources for educators here as well. So this is, in short, the renewable energy program. One last thing that I just noticed here that I did not show you was an example from the solar oven. And this is a teacher actually in Alberta who's working with his students on solar energy. So I just want to give this example on a way that you can actually adapt this program to fit into the needs of your classroom. So he teaches space discovery, and he took this idea of solar learning and adapted it for a mission to Mars. And what they did was they actually built solar water heaters. And why I find this example really awesome is because oftentimes when folks think solar ovens, they think we need to be outside. Sometimes that's not accessible depending on what time of year it is or whatever situation you have going on in your school. Lights do work as well. So you can investigate that, even compare that with outside with your students. There's lots of opportunity for learning and being flexible within this program as well. Now, I did say I would get back to the challenges. So all the programs that I showed you today, or the two programs, do have challenges associated with them. And challenges are what I like to think of as the culminating task where students are putting the knowledge that they've gained and the skills that they've gained together into real environmental action. Okay, so the Re-Energy Challenge is actually for students to build one of these renewable energy models. Obviously, the solar oven is a really popular one, but students have built all different kinds of models. Great learning activity. Once they've built this model, and whether you're using our construction plan, adapting that, and letting your students be flexible, we're open to either. You send that information back to us with a submission form explaining what you did, and it outlines question by question what type of information we're looking for. And you can be entered in to win a prize. And the prizes are cash prizes of $1,000, $500, or $250 for your class. You can use that money at your discretion. So whether you want to invest in maybe some watt meters for your class, or maybe more materials to build more models of renewable energy technology, or even upgrade something in your school or put it towards an existing project, that's completely up to you. Great opportunity for student learning, for student action, and for students to really understand the importance of renewable energy technologies and how they work. Now, we also have challenges associated with our energy conservation program. We have two. The first, this is for you folks who are learning in person in school, is our School Earth Hour Challenge. So this challenge actually challenges you to host your own School Earth Hour. So that's where students are looking at a baseline for their school. So we want to understand where we're starting at with energy. They're creating an energy savings plan. So I gave the example of the sweater. Maybe you might even have a no power hour where everyone in the school turns off the lights and uses maybe handouts instead of technology in order to do their work. Whatever it is that your students think will save energy, they create that plan, host their School Earth Hour, use our calculator or any other resources that you have in order to track your impact, and then send that back to us. And again, you have a chance to win one of these grand prizes. You are also eligible to submit for each of these challenges. So if you are doing both a School Earth Hour and building a renewable energy technology, you can submit for both of those challenges and have the opportunity to win in each category. If you've already hosted a School Earth Hour, feel free to submit for this challenge anyways. Think about back and have your students reflect and consolidate on what impact they did have. If you didn't track it with a calculator, how did you track your impact? How do they know if they're making a difference? So this is really, again, to consolidate the learning. For you folks who are learning at home, we do have a distance learning option, which is a home energy audit. This is also a great opportunity to connect the learning to home for those of you who are still learning in person or have a blended model. So here we actually have two different versions. We have a junior version. So this is a little bit more like a scavenger hunt for students where they're detectives and they have a detective number and they're going on a mission throughout their home. We also do have a senior version, which uses just changes the language a little bit to be more adult, using things such as audit instead of scavenger hunt. So I just want to show you what the report looks like so you can understand exactly what would be expected of your students. So here, again, the operation code name. So this one's a little bit more fun. They're going around and they're counting, starting with the lighting in their house, what type of light bulbs they use. So I showed you with my watt meter the difference in light bulbs. So once students know how many of each light bulb they have in their house, they can start to understand ways that they can become more energy efficient. And that's where their plan will come into place. And it doesn't have to be that they've actually taken these steps actively right now. It could be just that they're planning on when that light bulb burns out, I'm going to replace it with an LED. It goes through a number of different aspects of their home and guides students kind of piece by piece on what they're looking for so they can really get a solid understanding of energy within their home. We also do have within here the action tracker. So if you want to take it that step further, once you've done the audit with your students and look at what plan are we going to do and how are we going to implement it? So we don't want to just leave students with, yes, you can conserve energy by changing light bulbs. We want them to take real measurable action. We want them to know that they have the power to make a difference in the greenhouse gases that they're emitting, in the money that they're saving. So here you can record the impact. That can be anecdotal. So maybe it's anecdotal evidence that there's less energy being used in their home because they're turning the lights off more often. Maybe it's really specific information, such as how many kilograms of greenhouse gases per year they're saving. That can be geared up or geared down depending on what grade you're working with your students. So again, you have the opportunity to win prizes for this. The prizes are all the same across all of our challenges. And again, you can submit for multiple challenges. This activity is really fun. I would highly encourage the home energy audit. Like I mentioned, I was doing a workshop this morning with a grade 4 class who did this home energy audit. And the questions that were coming out of these students was extremely high level. And I actually had a student tell me exactly why incandescent light bulbs use more energy because of the wasted energy through heat. So there's lots of really great learning that happens there. And that's connected back to the home. So you know that those changes can actually be made and that students are making an impact. So those are our 3 challenges. You still do have a chance to register for these challenges this year and participate. Again, it's completely free to participate. I will support you along with the learning materials, the submission form, or anything you need along the way. The links to register for the challenges are in your handout. If you would like some direct information, you can feel free to message us directly or send us your email and we can forward you that information or answer any questions that you have about it. I did want to give quite a bit of time at the end here for you to explore some of these tools and ask questions. But before I get to that, I do want to talk a little bit about some of our other programs because they do all interconnect and interrelate. So I saw quite a few of you were teaching either general subjects or subjects outside of science and math. So I want to highlight some of our programs that are intertwined with these 2 energy programs. So just going to go to our main green learning page here. So this is just greenlearning.ca. Okay, so this is the page here. You can see all of our challenges can be found right in this page here. So if you want a quick access to all the challenges, again, the re-energy is building the renewable energy model, home energy audit, and the school Earth Hour challenge are the ones I've already talked about. I'm going to explain these 3 other ones here as well, because all of our programs, as I mentioned, do relate to the SDGs, which all do build upon each other. So our Flood Ed Challenge or our Flood Ed program actually looks at extreme weather. And this is really relevant for you folks out in BC who are not only, you're located, I think, close to the Fraser River, but you're also really located close to the coast. So flooding is a really big concern out in BC. It's also the #1 cause of the #1 natural disaster in Canada. So if you want to start connecting your learning maybe with hydroelectricity and water, you can go here to this Flood Ed program. So again, we have a number of different activities for students to really understand what flooding is, how it impacts them, and this is a place-based program. So everything within here is specific to your region. Then you can take action against flooding. So this is where we have a number of take action activities. So whether that's planting trees, a rain garden, installing a rain barrel, or anything you feel would make your school more resilient to flooding, you can do within this program, and we have guides on all of that. The challenge actually asks you to assess your school's flood risk and make a flood resilience plan. You might already have a flood resilience plan at your school. So it might be your students looking at that plan, assessing it, and making suggestions for improvement based on the new knowledge that they have. Flood resilience plans should be looked at very regularly because, as we know, climate change is impacting our weather, and extreme weather is becoming more and more of an issue, and sea level continues to rise. So those need to be reviewed constantly, and students need to be able to think critically about those factors. A couple of our other programs, I'm going to go to decoding carbon first. So this is for secondary students. So all the programs I've shown you so far basically go from grade 4 to grade 12 and cover a number of different subjects and can be geared up and geared down. Within a lot of the activities, if we give you a video to start off, for example, we often give you multiple videos to choose from. So if you have younger students, there's videos suitable for you, older students, videos suitable for you as well. So if you see that big range, I know as an educator that can be a little off-putting, but do know that it is geared up and geared down. So this is all about climate action and climate policy. Now, this program and our Flood Ed program are password protected. This is a brand new learning management website that we've just set up in order to make it easier for educators such as yourselves to navigate these programs. This program I want to highlight specifically because it's set up into different modules that can be used outside of this program. So if you are talking about energy with your students, but you want to start off by introducing climate change, I would recommend starting with the climate change module. So how is climate change shaping this world, the evolution of climate change science, and global impacts of climate change? That'll give students a really solid baseline understanding of climate change so they can really understand what their energy information is telling them and how that relates to the greater picture of climate change. Of course, you can get into more climate policy and looking at different options. The simulator activity in this is absolutely fantastic, and there are some Indigenous specific activities in this program. The challenge for this program is to actually use a policy simulator, and we give you a couple of different options for your students to create their own climate policy for Canada. So they can actually suggest and manipulate the simulator in order to come up with what they think would be the best course of action. We know that there's no perfect climate policy, but having your students think critically about the information that the government and the media is presenting them is so important, particularly in this age of digital media where students are bombarded with misinformation. So if you want your students to be able to navigate that misinformation, I would actually start with the evolution of climate science, because that'll help you debunk common myths and give you ideas of where students can start learning or go to fact check the information they're being presented with. The last activity or last program I want to highlight for you is our newest program that we just launched this Earth Week called Eco 360. And Eco 360 is all about the circular economy and plastics, or I should say our first module within this program is plastics. Again, this program does need a login to access the materials, but it is all completely free. This program is geared towards grades 9 to 12, but it does hit a number of different curriculum links in grades 7 and 8 as well. So we talk about what are plastics, the different properties of plastics. For those who are teaching higher level science, there are some labs within this program. So if you want your students hands-on learning about plastics, head in here. The importance of a circular economy, so making sure that we're not creating waste in anything that we do and that everything that we take from the environment either stays in our economy or goes back into the environment is so, so important. The challenge here is for students to actually go through this learning process and present an innovation plan. So whether that's a business model, a physical good that they can create, what can they do in order to propose a circular economy? So maybe they want to take plastic out of the environment and recreate it into bags. Or maybe they want to look and focus in on a company that already exists and propose ideas of how they could make their model more circular and reduce their waste. So great learning here, but again, this is geared towards a bit of a higher level audience, so that grade 9 to 12 range. Very high connections in chemistry here. So if you are teaching chemistry, I would highly recommend you check out this program. I am happy to meet with you individually and go through more in depth these other programs if you're interested in them. So I'll walk you through, kind of like I did today, the activities. You can tell me a little bit more about your classroom so I can suggest exactly what I think would fit into your learning plan, and we can talk about ways to adapt them for your specific needs. Now, I do have a few minutes left here, and I want to open up the floor for questions. I am going to stop the recording now. So if you want to unmute yourself and ask your questions, I would encourage you to do so. If you want to just throw those in the chat, that's okay as well. If you have any feedback for us, I would love to hear it. Again, if you want to get in contact with us, my email is at the bottom of the digital handout, or feel free to give us your email and we can get in touch with you, either with the recording of this session or any other information that you require. But really, I want to open up the floor right now for you folks. If there's anything additional that you need, if there's some information that you'd like me to go back over, I'd love to hear what you have to say now. So give me 1 second and I will just stop that recording. And I'll be monitoring the chat. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in there.